Vacations were supposed to be about escape. Claire had convinced me to rent this house on the Outer Banks, a sprawling 4-bedroom beachside retreat with endless views of the Atlantic. It was supposed to be a reset, time to unplug, relax, and spend quality time as a family. "You've been working too hard, Sam," she'd said a month ago, her hand brushing my arm with that warm familiarity I'd loved about her since the day we met. "You need this. We need this." She suggested inviting Derek, my younger brother, which surprised me. Derek and I weren't exactly close. He was the golden child growing up, charming, reckless, and magnetic in all the ways I wasn't. People were drawn to him, especially women. He could flash that crooked grin of his and make you forget that he was trouble wrapped in a leather jacket. "I don't know," I'd replied. "Derek's a lot." Claire had waved me off. "It'll be fun. He's family, and he's been lonely since his divorce." I didn't argue. Claire had a way of softening my resistance, and truth be told, I liked the idea of patching things up with Derek. Maybe this trip would do more than just recharge my marriage. It could heal old wounds, too. The first few days passed uneventfully. Claire and Derek laughed over drinks on the deck, their voices carrying over the sound of the waves. I tried to ignore the subtle glances they exchanged, the way they leaned toward each other when they talked. I chalked it up to paranoia, but by the fourth morning, the cracks in paradise began to show. It was early, just after sunrise. The air smelled of salt and seaweed as I stood barefoot on the deck, nursing my coffee. Claire's flip-flops were by the door, and Derek's sneakers were gone. The house felt empty. Curious, I walked through the rooms, checking the kitchen, the living room, even the little reading nook Claire loved. Nothing. The shower wasn't running, and the silence stretched on, too quiet for a house with 3 people. My gut churned with unease. I was about to head back upstairs when I noticed Derek's car keys still on the counter. He wasn't running errands or out for a drive. So where the hell was he? Claire's voice floated faintly from somewhere deeper in the house. I followed it, my heart picking up speed. It led me to the guest room Derek was using. The door was ajar. I hesitated, my hand hovering near the handle. "Claire," I called softly. No response. As I pushed the door open, I told myself I was being ridiculous. I'd find her folding laundry or borrowing Derek's charger. Something innocuous that would make me feel foolish for doubting her. But nothing could have prepared me for what I saw inside. The door swung open with a quiet creak. For a moment, I didn't register what I was seeing. My mind struggled to process the tangle of limbs on the bed, the rhythmic movement, the gasps and moans. It felt like I'd walked into someone else's nightmare, a scene too grotesque to belong to my life. Claire was on top of Derek, her hands gripping his shoulders, her head thrown back in ecstasy. Derek's face was a twisted smirk, his eyes half closed, completely oblivious to my presence. They didn't even notice me standing there. "Claire?" I croaked, my voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. She froze mid-movement, her head snapping toward me. For a fleeting second, her expression was one of shock, but it quickly shifted into something colder. Indifference. She didn't pull away, didn't cover herself. "Oh, for God's sake, Sam," she said, rolling her eyes. "Do you mind? Do I mind?" I repeated, my voice rising with every syllable. I felt like I was standing outside my own body, watching the scene unfold like some twisted reality show. Derek sat up slightly, unbothered by the fact that he was naked. "Hey bro, could you knock next time? Bit rude, don't you think?" My hands clenched into fists at my sides, trembling with the effort it took to restrain myself. "This is my wife, Derek. My goddamn wife." "And," Claire said, sliding off him with an infuriating air of nonchalance. She didn't bother to grab a sheet, standing there completely exposed as if daring me to react. "Don't be so dramatic, Sam. It's not like we've been happy for years." Her words hit me like a slap to the face. "What are you even talking about? I've been nothing but loyal to you." "Exactly," Derek said with a smirk, pulling on his boxers like this was just another day. "That's your problem, Sam. You're boring. Predictable. Claire needs someone who knows how to have fun." My fists itched to wipe that smug grin off his face, but the sheer absurdity of the situation rooted me to the spot. "You're my brother, Derek?" I said, my voice thick with disbelief. "How could you do this to me?" Derek shrugged. "It's not like you've been using her to her full potential. Claire deserves better." Claire sauntered to the door, brushing past me as if I were an inconvenience. "Honestly, Sam, stop acting like this is some grand betrayal. You'll survive. People get divorced all the time." I turned to follow her, rage bubbling up inside me like molten lava. "You don't even care, do you? About me, about our marriage, about what this will do to our family." She stopped in the hallway, casting a cold glance over her shoulder. "I stopped caring a long time ago." Her words were the final blow, the knife twisted and buried deep in my chest. I stood there in stunned silence as she walked away, Derek trailing after her with a cocky swagger. They didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. The house was eerily quiet after they left, their laughter echoing faintly down the hall. I stood frozen in the doorway of Derek's guest room, staring at the rumpled bed where my wife and my brother had just destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind, none of them coherent. The betrayal felt like a physical wound, jagged and raw, slicing through every ounce of trust I'd ever given them. How long had this been going on? Was it my fault? Had I missed the signs? How could they be so cold? I stumbled to the kitchen, needing something, anything, to steady myself. The bottle of bourbon on the counter called to me, and I poured a glass with trembling hands, downing it in one fiery gulp. The burn wasn't enough to numb the pain. The sound of footsteps made me turn sharply. Derek walked in, shirtless and unapologetic, with the same cocky grin that had haunted me since childhood. "Thought I'd grab some coffee," he said casually, as if this were any normal morning. "Get out." My voice was low, shaking with suppressed fury. "Relax, Sam," he said, leaning against the counter like he owned the place. "Claire and I were just having a little fun. No need to lose your head over it." My fist slammed onto the countertop before I realized what I was doing. "Fun? You think this is fun? You've ruined my marriage. You've destroyed everything." Derek didn't flinch. If anything, he looked amused. "Oh, come on. Your marriage was already dead. Claire's been miserable for years. I just gave her an outlet." I lunged at him before I could stop myself, grabbing him by the collar and shoving him against the fridge. "You're a disgusting, self-centered bastard," I hissed, my face inches from his. "You're supposed to be my brother." He chuckled, even as I tightened my grip. "You really want to do this, Sam? Go ahead. Hit me. Show Claire just how boring old Sam handles his problems." The sheer arrogance in his voice made my blood boil, but something in me held back. Hitting him wouldn't fix this. It wouldn't erase the betrayal or the image of them together. I released him with a shove, stepping back. "You're not worth it," I spat. Derek straightened his shirt, unfazed. "Suit yourself. But don't expect an apology. Claire's made her choice." I watched him walk away, his confidence infuriatingly intact. The urge to chase after him, to scream, to throw him out of the house burned in my chest. But I didn't. Instead, I grabbed my phone. My hands were still shaking as I dialed the lawyer I'd once hired for a property dispute. The call rang twice before he picked up. "Matt Wallace," he answered, his voice brisk and professional. "Matt, it's Sam Carter," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need your help. It's about my wife." By the time Claire returned to the house that evening, I had already set my plan in motion. The divorce attorney, Matt Wallace, had been blunt but reassuring during our call. "You need evidence, Sam. Solid evidence. It's the key to getting what you deserve." His words echoed in my mind as I sat on the couch, waiting for her. I had my laptop open, ready to email him any incriminating proof I could gather. The betrayal replayed in my mind, sharpening my resolve. The door creaked open, and Claire stepped in, her face flushed from the salty ocean air. She looked surprised to see me sitting there. "You're still up?" she asked, dropping her bag on the floor. We need to talk, I said, my voice calm but firm. She hesitated, her casual demeanor faltering for the first time. Can it wait? I'm tired. No, it can't, I said, standing. Sit down. She rolled her eyes but complied, flopping onto the armchair across from me. Her nonchalance only fueled my anger. Do you even care about what you've done? I asked, the question cutting through the silence like a blade. Claire raised an eyebrow. Oh, here we go again. Sam, I told you this morning. Our marriage hasn't been working for a long time. That's not an excuse for screwing my brother, I snapped. Maybe if you'd paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have had to. She shot back, leaning forward with venom in her voice. You bury yourself in work, and I'm supposed to just sit around and wait for you to notice me? Don't you dare blame this on me, I said, my voice rising. I've done everything to support you, Claire. Everything. And you repay me by stabbing me in the back with Derek? She smirked, a cruel glint in her eyes. Derek doesn't make excuses. He knows how to have fun. My fists clenched at her words, but I forced myself to stay composed. You're unbelievable. Do you even hear yourself? You've torn apart our marriage and betrayed everything we built. For what? A fling with a man who doesn't give a damn about anyone but himself. Claire shrugged, her indifference cutting deeper than any insult. Maybe that's what I need, Sam. Someone who doesn't make everything so serious. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. You've made your choice, Claire. Now I'll make mine. I'm filing for divorce. For the first time, her mask of apathy slipped. You're being ridiculous, she scoffed.
No, Claire.
What's ridiculous is you thinking you can do this without consequences. I grabbed my laptop and turned the screen toward her. I've already started gathering evidence. Emails, texts, even witness statements if I need them. By the time this is over, you and Derek won't just lose me. You'll lose everything. Her face hardened. You think you can scare me with that? You're not the only one who can play dirty, Sam. I met her gaze, my voice cold and steady. This isn't a game, and you have no idea who you're up against. The morning after that tense conversation, I woke with a renewed sense of purpose. Claire and Derek had made their choices, and now it was time for me to make mine. The house felt heavy with tension as I moved through it. Claire avoided me entirely, staying locked in our bedroom. Derek lounged on the deck like he didn't have a care in the world, sunglasses perched on his smug face as he scrolled through his phone. I couldn't stomach the sight of him. Before leaving the house, I grabbed my laptop and an external hard drive. If I was going to fight back, I needed every piece of evidence I could find. That afternoon, I sat in the office of Matt Wallace, my divorce attorney. He was a no-nonsense man in his 40s with a sharp gaze that seemed to miss nothing. Do you have access to her emails, phone records, or anything incriminating? He asked, leaning back in his leather chair. I handed him the flash drive I'd prepared. Texts, emails, and even a few photos. It's all there. He plugged the drive into his computer, skimming through the files. This is solid. Combined with a detailed account of what you witnessed, this will paint a clear picture of infidelity. How long has this been going on? I don't know exactly, I admitted, but I have a feeling it's been months, maybe longer. Matt nodded. We'll start by filing for divorce and requesting a temporary restraining order against your brother. He won't be allowed near you or your shared property until the case is resolved. The thought of cutting Derek out of my life brought a grim satisfaction. Good. And Claire? She can stay in the house for now, I said, gritting my teeth. But not for long. When I returned to the beach house, the mood had shifted. Claire was sitting on the couch, her arms crossed, while Derek hovered in the kitchen, pouring himself a drink. Look who's back, Derek said with a smirk. I ignored him and set my keys on the counter. Claire, we need to talk. She rolled her eyes. What now, Sam? I filed for divorce, I said bluntly, and I've requested a restraining order against Derek. He'll be out of this house by the end of the week. Her jaw tightened, but she forced a laugh. You're really going through with this? Over one mistake. One mistake, I barked, incredulous. You're calling months of betrayal a mistake? You've shattered everything we built, and you think I'm just going to let it slide? Derek stepped closer, his smirk fading. You think you're some big-shot hero, Sam? You're pathetic. I rounded on him, my voice low and venomous. You're a parasite, Derek. You leech off everyone around you, and now you've finally gone too far. This ends now. He sneered. What are you going to do? Run crying to Mom and Dad? Tell everyone what a big, bad villain I am? Exactly, I said, my voice steady. Everyone's going to know what you did. Your friends, your colleagues, the family. By the time I'm done, you won't have a shred of credibility left. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt cross Derek's face. You're overreacting, Claire cut in, but there was an edge of nervousness in her voice now. I turned to her. Overreacting? You've lost your husband, Claire. And once this divorce is finalized, you'll lose a hell of a lot more. I hope it was worth it. The first domino fell that evening. I didn't wait for Claire or Derek to concoct their excuses before making my first move. I called my parents. If anyone needed to know the truth about Derek, it was them. Sam? My mom's voice came through, warm and oblivious. How's the vacation going? I tightened my grip on the phone. Mom, I need to tell you something, and it's bad. What's wrong? She asked, her voice tinged with concern. Derek and Claire. I paused, my throat tight. They've been having an affair. I caught them this morning. There was a sharp inhale on her end. Sam, are you sure? I saw it with my own eyes, I said flatly. They didn't even care that I caught them. They laughed, Mom. They didn't apologize. Didn't show an ounce of remorse. The line went quiet for a moment before my dad's voice joined. What's going on? Your son, I said, my anger bubbling. Your golden boy has been screwing my wife. That's what's going on. Dad's voice darkened. Derek did what? I laid it out in blunt detail. Every word felt like a dagger, but I needed them to understand the gravity of what Derek and Claire had done. When I finished, Mom's voice trembled. Sam, I'm so sorry. I can't believe he would do this to you. Believe it, I said bitterly. Because it happened. Dad's tone was steely. We'll handle this. Where is he now? At the house, acting like he's done nothing wrong. That changes tonight, Dad said, hanging up without another word. That evening, Derek and Claire found themselves face to face with my parents. The confrontation was brutal. I stayed upstairs, listening as my dad's voice boomed through the house. How dare you do this to your brother? He roared. You've crossed every line, Derek. Every single one. Oh, spare me the moral lecture. Derek fired back, his arrogance intact. Sam's no saint. He's boring. Claire deserves better. Better. Mom's voice cracked with anger. She deserves better, so you sleep with her? Destroy your family? Your brother's marriage? What kind of person are you? The kind who doesn't live by other people's rules. Derek sneered. I'm not going to apologize for doing what I wanted. You're a disgrace, Dad growled. You've lost us, Derek. You've lost this family. I heard the shuffle of feet and the sound of Derek dragging his suitcase. When the door slammed, I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Claire, however, stayed. She wasn't hiding or begging for forgiveness. No, she lounged in the living room with a glass of wine, as if nothing had happened. When I walked in, she smirked. What's the plan, Sam? Another self-righteous speech about how I've ruined your life. I stared at her, my anger cold and sharp. You don't even feel bad, do you? Why should I? She shot back. I wanted more, Sam. You couldn't give it to me. Derek could. You threw away 12 years of marriage, I said, my voice trembling. And for what? A man who can't even keep a steady job. She shrugged, swirling her wine. Maybe I didn't want steady. Maybe I wanted something exciting. I laughed bitterly. Exciting? Do you know what's exciting, Claire? Watching everyone find out exactly who you are. Her smirk faltered slightly. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm telling everyone, I said. Our friends, our families, your coworkers. Everyone's going to know about you and Derek. You wouldn't dare, she hissed, her face hardening. Watch me, I said, my voice steady. You've taken everything from me, Claire, but I'll make sure the world sees you for what you are. A liar, a cheater, and a coward. Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't flinch. Go ahead, Sam. Ruin me. I don't care. You think I'm going to beg? You think I regret this? No, I said, stepping closer. I think you're too selfish to even understand what you've done. But you'll regret it, Claire. Not today, maybe not tomorrow. But when you're alone, and everyone who mattered has walked away, you'll regret it. She laughed, the sound sharp and hollow. Keep dreaming, Sam. You think you're the victim, but you're just bitter because you couldn't keep me. I shook my head, a grim smile on my face. This isn't bitterness, Claire. This is justice. Within days, the fallout was public. The carefully curated life Claire had built crumbled around her. Friends stopped returning her calls. Whispers followed her at work. Derek became a pariah, his reputation shredded as everyone learned what he'd done. But Claire didn't crumble. Not outwardly, at least. She held her head high, defiant in the face of her disgrace. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask for forgiveness. And yet the cracks were there, small but undeniable. You happy now? She snapped one day when she came to collect her things. You've turned me into the villain. You must feel so proud. I looked at her, my expression unreadable. I didn't turn you into anything, Claire. You did this to yourself. She glared at me, her defiance flickering for a brief moment. But she didn't say another word. She left, slamming the door behind her. The legal proceedings began 2 weeks after Claire moved out of the house. I expected a bitter fight, but I didn't realize how determined Claire and Derek would be to defend their betrayal. Our first court hearing was for temporary arrangements. Claire's lawyer, a sharp and cutting woman, wasted no time painting me as a vengeful husband. Your Honor, she began, her voice crisp. Mr. Carter is clearly using this divorce to punish my client. His actions, airing private matters to friends and family, are designed to humiliate her rather than reach an equitable resolution. I sat still, clenching my fists beneath the table, as her words twisted the narrative. Matt Wallace, my attorney, remained calm. When it was his turn, he stood and countered with a quiet authority. Your Honor, my client isn't seeking humiliation. He's seeking accountability. Mrs. Carter's repeated infidelity with Mr. Derek Carter is not a matter of dispute. It's a matter of fact, and we have the evidence to prove it. He handed a folder to the judge. Inside were text messages, photos, and other evidence. Claire didn't even flinch as the judge reviewed it. She sat with her arms crossed, her face cold and unbothered. The facts are clear, Matt continued. This marriage didn't dissolve naturally. It was sabotaged by Mrs. Carter's actions. She betrayed her husband with his own brother, and now she's seeking to benefit from that betrayal. My client is simply asking for what's fair. The judge glanced at Claire, her expression stern. This evidence speaks volumes, Mrs. Carter. This is not the behavior of someone acting in good faith. The most intense moment came during the discussion about the house and shared assets. Claire had demanded half of everything, citing the years we'd spent together and the life we'd built. I contributed to this marriage, Claire said, her voice dripping with entitlement. I deserve my share of what we've built together. Matt stood, his expression unreadable. Your Honor, we'd like to introduce an important detail into the record. He gestured toward a screen, where photos appeared. Luxury handbags, designer shoes, spa retreats, and even a membership to an exclusive country club. These items, Matt said, were purchased not with Claire's earnings but with Mr. Carter's income, without his knowledge or consent. The room fell silent. For years, Matt continued, Mrs. Carter has been living a life of indulgence, treating herself to luxuries and memberships while telling my client the funds were being saved for their future. This isn't just about infidelity. It's about a fundamental breach of trust. The judge's gaze hardened. Mrs. Carter, is this true? Claire shifted in her seat, her calm exterior faltering for the first time. I wanted things to feel special. Is that a crime? It's deception, Matt said, his tone sharp. And it speaks to the lack of respect and transparency that has defined her behavior in this marriage. Claire opened her mouth to retort, but the judge cut her off. That's enough. This behavior is concerning, and it will be taken into account when determining the division of assets. Her confidence cracked. Claire slumped slightly in her chair, shooting me a glare that could cut glass. Outside the courtroom, Derek waited for her, leaning against the wall with his usual smug grin. But even he looked shaken by the proceedings. You think this makes you the good guy? He sneered at me when I passed by. No, I said, staring him down. It just makes me the one who survived. Derek laughed bitterly. You'll never be happy, Sam. You don't know how to let things go. Letting go doesn't mean letting you and Claire walk all over me, I said firmly. You're nothing to me now, Derek. You chose this, and now you can live with it. Word of the trial spread quickly. Derek, once the charming rogue of our family, became a social outcast. Friends stopped returning his calls, and even his colleagues distanced themselves. Claire faced her own consequences. The details of her indulgent spending leaked to her coworkers, tarnishing her reputation at work. Promotions she'd once been in line for slipped through her fingers, and her closest friendships crumbled. But she didn't apologize. She didn't beg for forgiveness. Instead, she doubled down, her bitterness growing with every loss. You think you've won, she said one day as she gathered the last of her things from the house. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. This isn't about winning, Claire. It's about justice. You're a coward, she snapped. You can't handle the fact that I wanted more than what you could give me. I shook my head, my voice calm. What you wanted wasn't more, Claire. It was hollow. And now you have nothing. Her glare burned into me, but she had no response. She stormed out. The days after the trial felt strangely quiet, as though the storm had finally passed, leaving behind a hollow calm. The house was mine again, but it didn't feel like home. It felt like a monument to what I'd lost. A life built on lies. I threw myself into work, burying the pain in hours of meetings and deadlines. My colleagues, many of whom had heard whispers about what happened, treated me with a mix of sympathy and respect. You're handling this better than most people would, my boss Karen said one afternoon. I don't have a choice, I replied, forcing a smile. It's either move forward or let it destroy me. But moving forward wasn't easy. Memories of Claire were everywhere. In the way sunlight hit the kitchen window, in the throw blanket she loved, even in the music I used to play while we cooked dinner. One evening, as I cleaned out the closet to get rid of her remaining things, I found an old photo album tucked behind a pile of sweaters. I opened it hesitantly, my hands trembling as I flipped through pages of smiling faces and happy moments. There was a photo of us on our wedding day, Claire laughing as she smeared cake on my face. Another of a vacation in the mountains, where we'd spent hours hiking and talking about our future. It hit me then, not just the pain of betrayal, but the grief of losing the life I thought I had. I wasn't just mourning the end of a marriage. I was mourning the death of an illusion. Meanwhile, the fallout for Claire and Derek deepened. Derek had retreated to a small rental apartment on the outskirts of town. His once thriving social life was non-existent, his charm unable to mask the stench of betrayal. He's lost everything, my mother told me over coffee one Sunday. He called, begging us to forgive him. Your father refused to take the call. I don't want anything to do with him, I said firmly. I know, she replied, her eyes sad. But it's hard, Sam. He's still our son. He stopped being my brother the moment he betrayed me, I said. As for Claire, she clung to what little dignity she had left, though it was clear she was struggling. The promotion she'd been eyeing for years was given to someone else, and her once close circle of friends had all but disappeared. One day, I ran into her at the grocery store. She was pushing a cart, her makeup carefully applied, but there was a weariness in her eyes that she couldn't hide. Sam, she said coolly, acknowledging me with a curt nod. Claire. We stood there in awkward silence for a moment, the weight of everything unspoken between us pressing down like a stone. "You look well," she said finally, her tone flat. "So do you," I replied, though it wasn't true. Her eyes flicked over me, searching for something. Weakness, maybe, or regret. But I didn't give her the satisfaction. "Do you miss me?" she asked suddenly, her voice sharper than I expected. "No," I said without hesitation. "I miss the life I thought we had. But I don't miss you." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. Instead, she gave a bitter laugh. "I hope you're happy, Sam. You've made your point." "I didn't do this to make a point, Claire. I did it because you left me no choice." I walked away before she could respond, my chest tight but my head held high. Despite everything, rebuilding wasn't a solitary journey. Friends I hadn't seen in years reached out, offering support and encouragement. My parents, though shaken by Derek's actions, rallied around me. Even my boss offered an unexpected gesture of kindness, giving me extra time off to sort through the emotional and logistical mess of the divorce. "Take care of yourself, Sam," Karen said. "You've been through hell, and you've earned some peace." I spent my weekends hiking trails I'd neglected for years, rediscovering the beauty of solitude. I took up cooking again, trying recipes Claire had never cared for but that I loved. I even joined a local photography group, finding solace in capturing moments of light and shadow. Each step forward felt small, but it was progress. The final blow to Derek and Claire's fragile confidence came at a family gathering. My parents, despite their initial reluctance, decided to tell the extended family what had happened. The news spread quickly, and the response was unanimous. Derek and Claire were outcasts. When Derek tried to attend my cousin Emily's engagement party, he was turned away at the door. "This is a family event," she told him coldly. "And you're no longer family." Claire faced similar rejection. A mutual friend of ours, Natalie, confronted her during a chance encounter at a cafe. "How could you do that to Sam?" Natalie demanded. "Do you have any idea how much he loved you?" Claire's attempt at a snide remark faltered under Natalie's glare. For the first time, it seemed like the weight of her actions was beginning to sink in. For me, the turning point came one quiet evening as I sat on the porch, watching the sun set over the horizon. The house was silent, the air crisp and cool. I realized, in that moment, that I no longer felt anger or sadness when I thought about Claire and Derek. Instead, I felt something unexpected: freedom. They no longer had power over me. For the first time in months, the weight on my chest began to lift. The chaos Claire and Derek had brought into my life no longer consumed me. Each passing day, their betrayal felt less like an open wound and more like a scar, a reminder of pain, but also of resilience. I started focusing on the things I'd neglected during my marriage. The house, once a constant reminder of what I'd lost, became a project. I repainted the walls, rearranged the furniture, and replaced things that carried memories of Claire. It was cathartic, turning the space into something that felt like mine again. One evening, while cleaning out a box of old papers, I found a list Claire and I had made years ago: goals for the future. Most of them were simple: travel more, learn new skills, spend weekends hiking. I realized then how much I'd abandoned for the sake of a relationship that hadn't been worth it. So I started small. I took a weekend road trip to the mountains, something I'd always wanted to do but never prioritized. The fresh air, the towering trees, the solitude. It reminded me how much joy there was in the world, even without someone by my side. At work, I threw myself into new challenges. My boss noticed, offering me a lead on a project I'd only dreamed of tackling. "You've been on fire lately," Karen said, smiling. "It's good to see you thriving." But the most profound change came when I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years. They reminded me of who I was before Claire, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. The call came on a quiet Thursday evening. I was sitting on the porch, sipping tea and watching the sun dip below the horizon. My phone buzzed on the table, and when I saw Derek's name flash across the screen, I hesitated. Against my better judgment, I answered. "What do you want?" I said, keeping my voice calm but distant. For a moment, there was silence on the other end. Then Derek's voice, quieter and less confident than I'd ever heard it. I messed up, Sam. I let out a sharp laugh, bitter and unamused. You think. I mean it, he said, his tone pleading. I've lost everything. Friends, work, even mom and dad. I don't know how to fix this. I stood pacing the porch. You can't. What you did isn't something you come back from, Derek. You didn't just betray me. You destroyed any trust we had. That's on you. Sam, he said, desperation creeping into his voice. I was stupid. I wasn't thinking.
No, he snapped.
You were thinking. You just didn't care. You wanted what you wanted, and to hell with the consequences. Now you're dealing with them. He was silent again, and I imagined him on the other end, realizing that no apology would ever be enough. What do you want from me, Derek? I asked finally. I don't know, he admitted. I wish I could take it back. You can't, I said firmly. But here's what you can do. Stay out of my life. Don't call, don't show up, don't even think about trying to make things right. You don't deserve that chance. He muttered something under his breath. A quiet, broken, okay, and hung up. It wasn't the closure I expected, but it was the kind I needed. Derek's call wasn't about making amends. It was about his own guilt, and I didn't owe him absolution. The day I signed the final divorce papers, a strange sense of peace settled over me. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was something close to relief. The chapter with Claire was finally closed, and with it, the power she and Derek had over me was gone. I sat in my living room that evening, staring at the blank walls that I'd left intentionally bare. They weren't empty out of sadness, but because they symbolized possibility. Space for something new, something better. For months, I'd been asked the same questions by friends and family. How do you move on from something like this? How do you survive being betrayed by the people closest to you? At first, I didn't have an answer. Now I did. I stood in front of a group of close friends and family during a dinner I'd organized to celebrate a fresh start. The clinking of glasses and soft laughter faded as I cleared my throat. I wanted to thank you all for being here tonight. I began, my voice steady but filled with emotion. The last year has been the hardest of my life. There were days I didn't think I'd make it, but I did, and that's because of all of you. My parents nodded, their faces soft with pride and love. My best friend, Mark, raised his glass in silent encouragement. I've thought a lot about what it means to lose everything, or at least what feels like everything, I continued. When Claire and Derek betrayed me, it wasn't just the loss of a marriage or a relationship. It was the loss of trust, of belief in the people I thought I could count on most. A hush fell over the room. But I've learned something important, I said, my voice growing stronger. When someone tears you apart, you don't stay broken forever. You find the pieces that matter most and you rebuild. Stronger, smarter, wiser. I paused, scanning the faces of the people who had supported me. This betrayal doesn't define me. What defines me is how I chose to respond, by holding on to my values, by refusing to let anger consume me, and by building a better life for myself. A ripple of applause broke out, and I smiled, finally feeling the weight lift from my chest. The days that followed were brighter than I'd imagined they could be. I threw myself into work, landing a promotion that came with a sense of accomplishment I hadn't felt in years. I traveled to places I'd always dreamed of visiting. The Grand Canyon, New York City, the Pacific Northwest. But more importantly, I found myself again. The man I was before Claire and Derek was still there, buried beneath years of compromise and self-doubt. And as I moved forward, I discovered parts of myself I hadn't even known existed: resilience, self-reliance, and an unwavering belief that I deserved more than what I'd been given. As for Claire and Derek, their lives unraveled in ways I couldn't have anticipated. Derek's arrogance had burned every bridge he'd ever built, leaving him isolated and bitter. Claire, who once prided herself on her social connections and professional success, found herself struggling to recover from the stain of her own actions. They tried to rebuild, but their foundation was cracked. And though they never apologized, never asked for forgiveness, I didn't need them to. Their regret was written in their lives, in their loneliness and in the echoes of the choices they couldn't undo. One evening, I stood on the same beach where this nightmare had begun, the waves lapping at my feet. The air was cool and salty, the horizon painted with the orange and pink hues of sunset. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about Claire or Derek. I wasn't replaying the betrayal or imagining their downfall. I was simply present, feeling the breeze on my face and the sand between my toes. Life had moved on, and so had I. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, "You made it."